second day of Get Fresh with Your Feline Week, where today we are going to be discussing a very important topic when it comes to switching up your cat's food, which is the fears that we all have had or have around fresh feeding.
Joining us today to discuss these fears surrounding anything that we feed our cats that doesn't come out of a bag or a can is the exceptional Dr. Judy Morgan, award-winning veterinarian, 36 years in clinical practice, best-selling author, public speaker, and certified and accredited veterinary acupuncturist, chiropractor, and my favorite, food therapist. Dr. Judy Morgan, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for the invitation, and I love that the cats are chiming in too.
Right?
Yes,
Jeff's
of course.
very excited about this.
Of course they're going to. They have to sing their little carols to us.
As long as they're not climbing the trees, right?
So let's just jump right in. This is a big topic. We went straight to the cat community and asked, what is or was your fear of feeding raw meat specifically? Now, we know there's different aspects of feeding fresh, but the raw diet is the fastest growing segment. And possibly one of the healthiest ways to feed our cats, right? So we asked, and I'm telling you, Dr. Judy, within an hour, we had hundreds of comments. So we were like, great, let's just ask Dr. Judy Morgan. So let's dive right in. The first question.
Yeah, the biggest one is always the illness, right? That my cat's going to get Salmonella, E. coli, all of these terrible parasites. And I get this because, 6-7 years ago when we made the switch to feed our cats raw, I told Jay she was going to kill our cats and I wanted nothing to do with it. So this fear is a real fear. What say you?
Absolutely, it's a real fear. And I started raw feeding my pets, like in the early 2000s, maybe around 2003. And clients had started coming to me in the couple years before that saying, hey, what about this raw diet thing? I want to start feeding my pets raw diet. And I didn't know anything about it. So I used the same line that every other veterinarian has used and many still use, which is, bacteria, parasites, raw, no, can't do that. And so I avoided it for quite a while. And then at the time, Ian Billinghurst had a BARF diet, a raw, biologically appropriate raw food diet available here in the US. And so I ordered it to try I started with my dogs first. I ordered it to try for them. And literally within a couple of weeks, they just, everything changed. All the gas went away. I used to not be able to stay in the room with my Doberman. I mean, it was bad. And all that went away and they were healthy and vibrant and energetic. And I went, must be something to this. So I started researching it more and then obviously started feeding all of my animals raw food and started really looking at this fear because I believe the hype. That's the CDC has it posted on their website. The American Veterinary Medical Association has it posted on their website. Oh my gosh, you'll kill everybody in your family. It's not true. First of all, if you eat meat in your household, you are handling raw meat all the time. So people know how to handle raw meat. So to say that by bringing raw meat in for our pets, we're going to somehow contaminate the environment by handling that raw meat, that's crazy talk because we all handle raw meat. Unless you're a vegan or vegetarian and you don't have any meat anywhere in your house, then you probably don't have cats because they really should not be vegans or vegetarians. So just handling the meat is not going to be a problem. Our pets have a very, very low stomach acid. So the pH of our stomach, the juice inside our stomach is about 3.5, which is very acidic. So if you ever have acid reflux, it burns because it is an acid. Well, our pets have a stomach acid of about a pH of 1.5. So it's even lower than ours. And guess what that acid does? It kills bacteria. It does an amazingly good job. Have you ever noticed that animals will go, not cats as much as dogs, but they'll go out and they'll eat dead things and they eat poop and they eat things that are just loaded with nasty, disgusting, horrible bacteria and they don't get sick. And if we look at, so I have 9 cats at the moment, 7 of which are my outdoor barn kitties. They catch mice, they catch birds, they catch bunnies, they catch everything that's out there and they eat everything.
And they don't cook it?
They don't, they don't have a campfire out there and they are really healthy. And interestingly, I did There's a company called IPL, Innovative Pet Labs, and they test stool samples for inflammatory markers and, things that are going on in the GI tract. And so I did an interview with them, and she said, "Oh man, your cats would be a great study because I have a couple of indoor cats and then I have these outdoor cats. The outdoor cats are getting wild prey, plus we feed them raw. And then our indoor cats, they're a little pickier. So sometimes they get canned food. They're not getting wild prey that they catch. So when they catch the wild prey, they're getting body parts that we don't include, even if we're feeding raw food in the house. So they're eating the feathers, they're eating the brains, they're eating all the bones, they're eating the intestines. Like they had a bird the other day. The only reason I knew was because there were a few feathers. Everything was gone. So they eat very differently. And when we got the results back from, and you should have seen me running around the barnyard trying to follow cats when they were trying to, leave me presents. It's really, it's a few weeks to get everybody. But interestingly, the outdoor cats who are getting the wild prey and have tons of activity, I mean, they're living the life that a cat is supposed to live. Their results were perfect, amazing, no inflammation, everything looked great. The indoor cats were not as good because they are not getting that same level of exercise and diet. And one of them had recently had a dental procedure before I got his stool sample. So he was given antibiotics and pain meds. And so that really messed everything up too. So the answer is, if you are, particularly if you're buying a commercially made raw food, if it is well sourced from a good company, it's not going to be meat that's loaded with parasites, and it's not going to be meat that is loaded with bacteria. When we have confinement raised beef or confinement raised poultry, and it's kept in, very close quarters, that meat, and that's what we buy in the grocery store most of the time, that meat has a much higher level of bacterial contamination. If you are buying and I will freely admit that, we eat pretty well at our house, but many people are buying grass-fed organic meats for their pets and not for themselves. And if you are getting food that is humanely, ethically pasture raised, free range, that sort of thing, the bacterial load in that meat is going to be marginal compared to what we are handling from the grocery store. So it really is. And let me tell you, my outdoor cats that are catching wild prey, eating it raw, no parasites, no bacterial. We don't have problems.
I have to say, we've been feeding our indoor cats a raw food diet now for 7 years, almost 7 years. And we have never had one case of salmonella, not one case of E. coli, not one case of parasites ever in any of our cats that we've had over the past 7 years.
Yep. And I've been doing it for 20 years and never had a problem. And interestingly, because we do a lot of rescue and foster work, and animals that come in with a huge parasite load, because we're getting them from, puppy mills and that sort of thing, that, very poor environments. When they come in and they're loaded with all these parasites, we get them switched over, we treat them for everything, and we switch them over to their raw diet. And the parasites never come back. It's never a problem. And I will admit to sometimes bringing animals in and not running their stool sample until I remember a couple of weeks later. And then I go, oh God, he's got every parasite under the sun. And none of my other animals ever get the parasites because they have a healthy immune system and they're eating a good diet. And so, I would put the parasite problem or the bacterial problem on the back burner. And interestingly, many, many times with animals with cancer, the oncologist will say, oh, you can't feed a raw diet because their immune system is compromised, or an animal who's on steroids for whatever. Oh, you can't feed them a raw diet because of the bacterial problem. I've treated so many animals with cancers that are on chemo, animals on immunosuppressants, and allowed them to maintain their raw diet. So if we're doing a keto diet for cancer, it's got to be raw. You can't cook it. It's too high in fat. You'll just have a huge pancreatitis problem. So I even leave my cancer patients, my immune compromised patients on their raw diets because it's healthier for them. And I'm not worried about the bacteria.
That was
I
another
was gonna
big
say,
question. Yeah,
You
because
just did the perfect segue.
yeah,
into
the other question was, what my cat has FELV or FIV or cancer or some type of
autoimmune.
immune deficiency, right?
Right.
And it's I've heard different people say different things as far as like, well, gently cook it, or get the HPP or something like that. But you see no problem in feeding
Nope.
because it builds that immune system, right? And that's what these cats need is
Exactly.
a strong immune system. And if you do that through food therapy, through food,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. But again, source your food well.
right.
So make sure that you are buying from good companies, clean companies, and a lot of the raw pet food companies are now actually testing their foods and doing cultures before a batch is released to make sure that it is not contaminated before it is leaving. So if you find companies that are doing that, that's just another added layer of protection. And then you're going to handle that meat the same way you would handle raw meat in your household. But again, if you're buying it from the grocery store, you're buying poultry from the grocery store. I watched a documentary on this, one of those things you should probably never do. But it was a public health person talking about the contamination of the meats. Anything that's ground has more surface area, and that's going to have a higher chance of being contaminated because if there's bacteria on the surface and then you grind it, you mix that in with it, and then it grows. Right. So it really is just a matter. And the other interesting thing is we have 0 cases of people getting sick from Salmonella and E. coli from handling raw food, but we have lots of cases of people getting sick from handling kibble that is contaminated with Salmonella.
Yeah, isn't it true that more kibble has been recalled than raw food by
millions of tons? Yes,
millions with Salmonella, and that's the highly processed, ultra processed,
and cooked at high heats. And
you would think
Salmonella.
Because that's what they said. It cooks out germs. Cooking kills germs, but obviously,
well, okay. When it was cooked at high heat, yes, that killed the germs. But then it gets sprayed with fats and things afterwards. And a lot of these factories where the kibble is made are really dirty. And when you see companies that have repeated recalls or repeated notices, warnings about Salmonella contamination or E. coli contamination, that's a factory that has a problem, and they need to get in there and do a good cleanup.
Yeah.
Really good point. Also good point to keep an eye on those food recalls, like with the truthaboutpetfood.com.
Yeah.
Susan Fixton.
Who will be
tomorrow. But
so Susan always posts those lists. You can also just go to the FDA website and see the lists. But they're easy to find. You just put it in your search engine, pet food recalls.
That's a really good reality check as far as recalls and kibble versus raw. But I want to real quick revisit the feline leukemia, the FIV questions, because I think, with the different stages, even people that are advocates for fresh feeding, they're like, oh, once you get to a certain stage, could you just be specific about when it comes to like feline leukemia, how do you kind of gauge that?
Or FIV.
So the only time I would consider changing is if I had an animal, one who's gone off the food. Like sometimes they will become averse to it. Like the texture isn't good for them anymore. It's too wet. It's too heavy for them. Because we'll see this in animals like in late stage kidney failure or late stage heart disease. Any of the later stages of diseases, sometimes there's just too much, from a Chinese medicine perspective, too much dampness in their body. And so that heavy, wet food, they're kind of like, so I was eating it great and now I'm not eating it so well. So a lot of times what we'll do there is we will go to a gently cooked because we get a little bit of the moisture out of there. Or you can go to a freeze-dried product, which when you rehydrate it, it's not getting up to that level of moisture that you have with the raw food. So for some cats, it might be a texture problem. It might be a moisture problem. And if they have significant bowel disease, whether they've got, fibrosis, scarring, something going on in the bowel where they're not absorbing, and that cat is adorable, where they're not absorbing and utilizing their food as well, then that's the time when we say, well, if we feed something that is gently cooked, now that's been partially digested. And there's a huge difference between gently cooked and cooked at high temperature multiple times, like kibble. So with a gently cooked food, it's been partially digested. So this is where I really love like making things in a slow cooker, because we retain the moisture, we retain the vitamins and minerals, but it's basically been broken down already. And then if we add a digestive enzyme to it, then so those cats where they have more advanced disease, they're not able to eat as much, or they're not utilizing their nutrients as well, that's a way we can enhance that.
Awesome.
I absolutely love that. That's really, really key though too. I mean, you're talking about the palatability and what the body actually needs,
Right.
being the only time that you would switch that up. To address the other thing that kind of back to the bacteria or or cats that have a suppressed immune system, how do you, as a vet that said, oh my gosh, the bacteria, 20 some years ago, how would you suggest us cat parents talk to our veterinarians about, when they say, don't do this, it's dangerous?
Or the prescription diet, right? Even
Yes,
add in
both of
that
those.
when the vet says your cat has to be on this prescription diet for the rest of their life. That was a big one in our comment thread. People were like, I wish I could, but my cat has to be on a special food, or my cat has to be on a prescription diet.
So prescription diets are meant to be just like any other prescription, although we're really bad about drugs as well. It's meant to be used short term. Prescription diets were originally made to be a short-term prescription. Like you would get antibiotics for a couple of weeks, you get the diet for a couple of weeks, get over the hump of what the problem is, and then feed them an appropriate food.
Right.
So prescription diets that are dry kibble are absolutely the worst thing we can feed cats. So if your veterinarian is saying your cat has to be on a prescription diet, then at least insist on a canned food or a high moisture pouch, whatever, because cats need moisture. They don't drink enough. And that's why we have a lot of the urinary problems. So for those of you who say, I have to feed this prescription diet, I can't feed a raw food because my cat had crystals in his urine or he had a blockage. You know how you solve the crystals in the blockage? You get moisture in the diet, you get kibble out of the diet, and you feed things that are low in oxalates. That would be a species appropriate diet, which is meat, bone, and organ for cats.
Right. Yeah.
I love that.
I love
That's
that.
still a hard conversation though.
It is
for
so
people to
it's so
have.
hard.
Oh, it is. And I actually, when I first started being the crazy person online, that I've actually calmed down lately. But I had somebody from the New York Veterinary Medical Association threaten me with lawsuits because I was saying online that people did not have to feed these prescription diets. And they're like, you're going to make somebody kill their cat and their veterinarian prescribed this. You can't tell them not to feed that online. And I'm like, well, prescription diets are, and I had this argument at an AFCO meeting, and the people in the row behind me who were from one of the very large pet food companies that make a lot of prescription diets, I mean, they were back there snickering and laughing and pointing and calling me a quack. And I was, thanks, but this is how we're looked at because why would we want to feed our cats a species appropriate diet? Don't make as much money.
Just got a little
So much
wealth
lack of
of
common
gratitude.
sense.
So for really what it takes to be a brave pioneer and use some common sense when it comes, especially to our obligate carnivores, I think it is. I love this episode because there is so much fear around it.
Yep.
And sometimes we just, there needs to be 1, 2, 3 brave people that are able to say, this is what they need and here's why. Then we can actually feel more empowered to make better decisions for our cats.
So, back to your point of what do you tell your veterinarian who says he has to be on this for life? Well, one of the answers is prescription diets are not meant to be fed for life. It's like any prescription. We got to treat the problem. Okay, he's got a whole bunch of crystals. He just had a urinary obstruction. All right, we want to feed him something that's very low in minerals for a little while. We want to get rid of the inflammation. Okay, Well, if you feel compelled that you just spent a lot of money and you've got to do that prescription diet for a couple of weeks, month, whatever, then get the cat on a species appropriate diet that has the moisture, has what we need. We don't need to have these diets really are so restrictive that, especially the ones that are made to dissolve stones, and the kidney diets, which are prescribed way too early. We're restricting protein for our cats way too early in kidney disease.
Yeah.
Why do we get muscle wasting? Why do we have what I call the old dinosaurs? We have these 13-year-old cats who are walking skeletons that are dehydrated and have no muscle. And it's because when they were 9 years old, their creatinine went up 1/10 of a point, and somebody said, "Oh, kidney failure, we've got to put them on a kidney diet," and it kills them. They need that protein, and we can't be restricting it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, I
true.
can't remember. I think it was Dr. Chris Besant who makes the whole food Medicus diet used for short-term help. She was saying basically once you take that protein away, they literally start basically cannibalizing their own muscles because they need all those amino acids and stuff. And that's so true. You see these really skinny babies walking around.
And it really makes sense to, the average cat parent. I feel too, that it would make sense that a prescription should be, if they're calling it prescription, then it should be used as any other prescription should. So thank you for really pointing that out. Because that's what people
and the other thing is, basically it gets prescribed and then you literally go in and pick up your monthly refill. Where is the testing to follow up and see if it's even working? I've seen people that I get their records and it's like, well, you've been picking up this diet every month for the past 2 years and you've never done further lab work. You haven't done a urinalysis. You haven't done blood work. How do you know that this is working? How do you know that the cat needs this? It needs to be followed up just like any other medication would be.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really important and empowering for us to recognize that so many of these issues, whether it's kidney disease, urinary tract issues, diabetes, a lot of these things have a foundation in the food that they're eating. And so it can help us when we're told to just expect that a cat that's over 12 or 13 years old is going to have kidney disease. We need to be looking at why that is and
how to prevent that.
Right.
And really, when it comes to these epidemics in our household cats, it really starts with the food, and that's why we're having this whole week.
Right.
And I'm so grateful for you to be here and have a voice other than crazy cat ladies, having an actual a voice in the field, a world-renowned veterinarian.
I can tell you that the only cat I have ever had with kidney disease died at 16, but he had lymphoma that started in his throat and a year later went to his kidneys. And that's why he had kidney disease, because he had lymphoma in his kidneys. But I've never had a cat develop kidney disease being fed a high moisture raw diet.
Yeah.
And they're living till 2021. So it is a fallacy that all old cats get kidney disease. They don't.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of fallacies, because this is another one that is also still perpetuated by veterinarians, but it is that myth that we talk about all the time. And it is, if my cats eat anything other than kibble, they're going to get dental disease. Can you speak to this?
Well, and I just want to tee you up with the science that is out there that shows that more than 70% of cats by the time they are 3 years old will have some sort of dental disease. So I don't understand the common sense of, and 98% of cats are fed an only kibble diet. So how do you speak?
So this is my analogy for this. If you go to your dentist and you say, look, I'm never going to brush my teeth again. I'm not coming back to see you anymore because I am going to eat my bowl of Cheerios twice a day, every day. And that's going to keep my teeth clean. Because that is exactly what we're telling people with dry kibble for their cats. Here, let me paint my teeth with some carbohydrates, which, by the way, break down to sugar, which encourages bacterial growth, which encourages plaque and tartar. How does that make any sense at all? And if you watch your cat when they regurgitate their food, which they're not supposed to do that either, but when they regurgitate their food, what do you get? You have a pile of kibble that looks exactly like how it went down. They're not chewing it. It is not working their teeth and gums unless you buy the specific, very large chunk kibble that has a big matrix, which is they have to crunch. There's no way they can swallow it. Except, again, that is not, it's a prescription diet. That is not meant to be fed long-term as their sole diet either. Right. So how are we going to keep our cats' teeth clean? Well, let's see. My barn kitties have amazing teeth because they're out there crunching little birdie and mouse bones all the time. So chewing, raw meaty bones is, we talk about it for our dogs all the time. We don't talk about it for the cats, but it's great. So one of the things that we can use for kitty cats, and if you're worried about that whole raw thing, go buy chicken gizzards. You can find them in most grocery stores. The lining of the chicken gizzard is calcified. It's called epichitin. And it actually is nature's toothbrush. So when your cat chews on that, it's the same as chewing like a raw meaty bone, and it'll break down tartar. Most cats like them. And if you're worried about feeding it raw, go ahead and gently cook it, simmer it, and however you want to cook it. I don't care. And let your cat crunch on that. And it works really well.
That's perfect. Because I know a lot of like, how do you get a bone small enough for a cat to chew on? And isn't that dangerous? And
chicken wing tips, chicken flippers, the little wing tips.
Mm-hmm. Did you call them chicken flippers?
Chicken flippers. So we have dehydrated wing tips in the warehouse. There's a company that makes those. Cats can eat them, dogs can eat them. You can also do like dehydrated chicken feet, duck feet, those kinds of things, rabbit feet. Yes. Those are great for our kitties to chew. I mean, that's what keeps their teeth clean. Certainly if you want to start brushing, go for it. I don't know too many cat parents who brush teeth because we have to start when they're really young and get them used to being in their mouth, and they're not that thrilled with it. But certainly if you can, then by all means do it. But kibble is not going to keep the teeth clean. Kibble is going to coat the teeth with sugar, and that's why we're doing so many dentals on kitty cats.
Yeah, it is so really, it is a remarkable statistic. I was really floored by that. And yet that was one of the heartbreaking things that Jay and I have learned on our journey was, many years ago, we actually found a tooth and they brought it out and it was like, what is that about?
They were being fed kibble.
Kibble fed babies. So thank you for those resources.
Yeah, and feeding raw does not guarantee that. Like my 12-year-old cat just had a dental, but he had a couple of dental caries lesions, the forals, the feline resorptive lesions. And so the teeth had to come out. It wasn't that he had tartar, he had resorptive lesions. And that is actually a genetic problem.
Yeah. I had no idea. That was genetic. Okay. All right. So more fears. I think that a lot of people think, the only thing that I can feed is kibble because fresh food, any kind of fresh food is going to cost too much.
Yeah.
And so they just eliminate that option.
That is a thing because a lot of many of us, as you know, Dr. Judy, many of us, it's like cats are like potato chips. You can't just have one. And we end up with, a lot of kitties. And so feeding them becomes very expensive. What is your advice on the cost?
So you got to find ways around this, which is interesting because there's a cat food raw company that I said, I'm going to give them a try. So I ordered like the starter sample pack. And remember, I'm feeding a lot of cats, and it was like $300 at the reduced, starter price. And it was enough for like a week and a half for all the cats. And I went, not this one. It was going to break the bank for me to feed all these cats, but it was a company that really caters to, the one cat family. So you want to buy things that are maybe if you have a lot of cats, you're going to buy things that are in bigger serving portions than the little, 3 and 4 ounce packages, because that's just never going to work. You can learn to DIY your own raw food and buy from co-ops. You can shop sales for sure. And definitely compare prices. So Susan Thixton is just about to release her new list for the year. She sent it to me already. And on there, one of the things that she does is she gives you the price breakdown per day for each one of the foods so that you can look at them and say, okay, that one's, we can't afford that. Oh, look, here's something that is more along the lines of what I can afford. I would say buy in bulk. And if you can work with a local independent pet store where you can go in and buy it so you don't have to pay the shipping, because when you're shipping frozen food, the shipping prices can get exorbitant, particularly if you live out west, because it's a lot of dry ice and it has to be shipped fast. So maybe work with one of the independent pet stores, and each company does have a different price point, and that, you have to look at what can you fit in your budget. But I will tell you that, they shouldn't be eating kibble anyway. So if we take kibble off the list and then we start comparing canned foods or the little pouches of food versus the raw foods or the freeze-dried raw foods, you're going to find out that the canned food is going to cost you more. Especially since the pandemic, the cans were hard to get and metal was in short supply and shipping was hard. And like, I used to pay $22 for a case of cat food and it went up to $50. And so when I looked at what it was costing per can of food, I said, you know what? We're going to all raw. My cats, the indoor ones, the pains in the butt, really like the canned food more than the raw, which is funny because they were raised as kittens on raw. But they kind of got addicted to the canned food. And once the price doubled, I said, nope, I can't afford it. You are now on raw food. And so I found, a couple of companies that fit within my budget for the large group of kitty cats. And then, the outdoor cats, they're supplementing with whatever they catch. That's free. And I know not many people have outdoor cats, but mine happen to be in a very safe environment. So
I think right now, that's a really good point. We keep saying, well, if it's in the budget, And I think, everyone right now is really on crunch time. It's tough and it is scary, right? So I think the bigger thing though is, I know when I've used that phrase myself, I don't actually know what my budget is. What am I spending on
exactly
every month? How much does it cost for this? And then there is that proactive tickle in the back of my brain of that whole pay for it now or pay for it later.
Right. What am I saving in veterinary bills if I'm avoiding urinary obstructions and I'm avoiding, dental problems and I'm avoiding all these other issues that, you have a cat who obstructs on dry kibble, you're going to spend $3,000. One of our friends, her cat had to have a PU, the perineal urothrostomy surgery, and she was in $10,000. So, the raw food's looking pretty cheap when you start looking at things like that.
Right. Yeah,
and if you are feeding a prescription diet, you are paying through the nose for really low quality food, low quality food. And there's actually an ongoing lawsuit that is still unsettled, suing these companies for the prescription diets because they charge twice as much and the ingredients are no different than their over-the-counter stuff.
Yep. Yeah. We've done a deep dive into that before with Dr. Katie Woodley. It was very interesting to see the ingredient list.
Yes.
From one food to another and the price difference.
Yes.
With those
crazy.
special diets, veterinarian diets.
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad that you pointed out the budget because I think it's really important for anyone who's saying, no, it does cost too much. Like sit down and do the numbers real quick and look at what that cost is.
Yeah. And when you're comparing it to a canned food or even freeze dried, it's when a canned food or a kibble food, right? Like you think about how much a raw food diet as being biologically available to their bodies. They need much less. So it's not feeding them the same amount of a raw food diet that you would feed a canned food or a kibble because their bodies don't need, or because they can absorb all of it and they can utilize.
And the other thing with kibble is we get a lot of obese cats from all the carbs in the kibble. Obesity is an inflammatory disease and it leads to arthritis and pancreatitis and hepatitis and kidney disease. Like so many other things are related to the cats being obese. And it's pretty rare. I have one raw fed obese cat. She's a dwarf. She's little tiny short legs and then this big round body. But that's the only obese cat that I've seen that's raw fed. And that's one of my outdoor kitties. So it's if we can get rid of a lot of disease problems by feeding them an appropriate diet, it's less money spent at the veterinarian. Sorry, veterinarians, I'm taking away your income.
Well, here's the thing. Our veterinarians are just overwhelmed right now. There's
exactly
enough of them. So we're
actually helping them out.
Exactly.
and giving them a little bit
proactive.
of a break by feeding our cats a better diet.
Real quick, I know there's never enough time with you, but I do want to kind of, when you said you can, the brave ones can do the DIY. People are very worried about getting it right. How do you address that? If you're like, yes, I'm going to source these things and on the budget and.
Yeah. So if you are going to DIY, then I would recommend really educating yourself. I will tell you that I really do not like formulating diets for cats. It's so much harder than dogs, really much harder. So definitely educate yourself, or we've got a couple recipes on our website. There's in my new book, Keeping Your Pets Naturally Healthy, there's quite a few recipes for cats in there as well. So definitely look into it, maybe get on some of the raw feeding websites and or social media platforms and look at what people are putting in their diets, get some complete recipes to try them out, educate yourself a little bit, because if you just go buy some chicken breast or some hamburger and throw it in the bowl, that is not a complete diet and your cat will die.
Right. Over time, right?
Don't
Like
worry.
it's fine
Fine for a short interim. I mean, you've got to see if they're going to eat it to start with. Because I will tell you that if you have a cat who's been kibble fed, they are used to a dry, crunchy texture. And when you throw a piece of raw meat in the bowl, they're going to go, what? Like, I remember when I first got the little round frozen pucks, my cats literally played hockey with them. They were like, we don't know what this is, but they weren't about to eat it. It didn't look like food to them. So, it can take a while to get them switched over. So starting out with small bits of things, that's not their complete diet, that is absolutely fine. You got to see if they're going to eat it.
Yeah, that's it. And I will say that on Thursday, we're speaking with a pet food formulator, Emma Rutherford, and she's also, we've got your recipes. We've got tons of other, recipes that that are going to be available to you guys. Plus just, like Dr. Judy just said, like adding a little bit of fresh. Once we get our cats to eat them, adding a little bit of fresh to the bowl can go a long ways as well. And then on Friday, we're speaking with Dr. Katie Woodley, and we are going to go over the entire process of how to transition your cat from a kibble all the way over to a fresh food diet. So we've got all of that coming up soon as well. Now, just one last before we let you go, because this one, it blew our minds that we saw this comment more than just once. It was several times. People said something along the lines of, if I feed them raw meat, they will get the taste of blood and eat me, or go crazy, or, become a lion instead of a house cat is basically what they were saying. They're going to become angry. Where did that come from?
I have no clue, but I will tell you, when I was pregnant for my son 35 years ago, we had 5 cats or something at the time, and we had the bassinet in the bedroom, and our cat slept with us, and everybody was like, oh my gosh, the cats will smother the baby. They'll smell the milk on their breath or on their lips, and, they'll attack the baby and they'll smother. My cats snuggled with my kids. My cats never bit my kids. So I think this comes from that same line of reasoning. First of all, if you have a nasty, horrible cat, and there are some who, what's that TV show, The Cat from Hell or whatever it is. If you have one of those, whether you feed them raw or kibble, that's who they are until you figure out what their issue is. Like, one of my cats, you cannot pet him. He wants to be petted. He rubs up against you, and as soon as you reach out to pet him, he reaches out and, hey, I just don't pet you. But my cats are so sweet, and I have never ever seen a cat's personality change for the worse eating raw food.
Yeah, in fact, the opposite with the gut-brain axis. A lot of cats have seen, and you have too, I'm sure, a lot of cats that were more aggressive, and then once they switched over to a more species-appropriate diet, became more loving and kind because their gut is healthy. They feel better, so they don't feel like, a grumpy cat that just needs to scratch or kill anyone.
Yeah, I think when you started off talking about just the changes that you saw, because you started with your dogs, the changes that you saw. I think that's one of the really exciting things is, we can have these fears that feel very realistic, but when we do take that leap of faith, like I gave Jay a week, none of the cats died. And so I was like, I'll help a little, right? The changes that we saw as well, their coats, their energy, the brightness in their eyes, it was really amazing. I think finally I want to ask you, 36 years in clinical practice, you've probably seen everything that any of us are afraid of. What would you say to someone who's sitting on the fence right now and maybe is already dealing with a couple health issues to encourage them?
The only thing you can do is give it a try. And I know you're going to talk about transitioning, and like my cats that had been kibble fed their whole life when I started this raw journey, one of them, it took me 6 months to get her completely switched over. Like she was just like not having it. And she ended up living to 21. She died of lung cancer, totally unrelated to anything she was eating. So, you know, it was so worth it to see the changes in them. And I had to be really persistent and really patient for that particular cat. What's really cool now is that all of my cats for the past 15, 20 years, when I get them as babies, they're getting started immediately onto raw food. And it is so cool to see. So, you know, and they're so healthy. They're so energetic. Their coats are like, these are the healthiest cats I have ever had. And, you know, I don't worry about them getting parasites or diseases and, you know, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but man, minimum. So even my outdoor kitties, it's minimum, as in they had one. And that's it for life. And actually one of them missed, he was absent the day I gave everybody their one vaccine. So he's had none.
Okay. Well, that's so true though. Just give it a try. I really feel like your wealth of knowledge is one of the most invaluable things. You are always creating incredible resources for all of us pet parents, cats and dogs. Thank you for being one of the veterinarians that really does speak and have experience and understand and have a love of your 9 cats and all of ours. You have a couple things. I want to make sure everyone listening or watching today knows that you've got a great new course out called Kick the Kibble. And you're the veterinarian that blew my mind when Jay and I took your cat longevity course probably about a year ago. One of the best courses we've ever taken.
Really great course, guys. It's like an hour long is all, and it will set you up as a cat parent. Like you will know all the bases, right? I mean, you can always dive deeper into Dr. Judy Morgan's website. She's got tons and tons of information. But both of those links to the Kick the Kibble and to the cat longevity course are in the description here. If you guys are interested, definitely take advantage, because you'll just feel like you've evolved as a cat parent just from those short courses.
Could you give a quick summary for people that are like, what is Kick the Kibble about? Let them know.
So it literally is about what we've been talking about today, but talking about, you know, the dangers of kibble. In this particular course, it's specifically the dangers for kitty cats. And I think I go through about 6 different things, one of which being like the dental problems, but go through the problems and then also the problems with the pet food industry in general and the different things besides bacterial contamination, all the other recalls that we've had, and then how to transition your cat onto something other than the kibble. Like I said, one of my cats, it took 6 months. And then I think there's a couple recipes in there if you want to DIY and give it a try. And you can go to Gently Cooked. So the recipes that we have available on the website and in the courses, you can gently cook them to start with. And your cat may need that as a transition step. You just kind of have to see what they like. But so the Kick the Kibble course is really to help allay a lot of these fears. And actually, I think that a lot of people who take it will be more afraid of kibble once they get through that. They'll be running for the raw saying, "Oh, please give me something healthier for my cat."
That's perfect. That is perfect. I mean, again, those links are in the description here. Dr. Judy Morgan, anything that we did not touch on, anything in the top of mind, back of your mind, that's something, just about this fear that keeps us from taking this step that we didn't.
There's so many things to be afraid of in life. This one is pretty low on my list.
I love that. There's so many
Okay.
other things that you can waste your fear on. Don't fear feeding your cats the diet that they were made to eat. Yes.
Yeah. I just, my cats just on testing, they're beautiful. My 12-year-old cat, when he went in for his dental, his lab work is absolutely perfect. And, that's what we want to see. We don't want to see early kidney disease. We don't want to see diabetes. We don't want to see pancreatitis. We don't want to see all these chronic problems, arthritis and obesity. And by getting them on a species appropriate diet, we can avoid all of that. And it makes such a huge difference. And it's going to make a big difference in your vet bills and just in overall how your cat feels.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice to know that your cats have, like the cats in your video, they have all this energy and they're just exploring and busy and happy, and they're not a slug who just literally grazes back and forth to the food bowl and that's the only exercise they get.
Yeah, well, and it also helps us as cat parents because two of the side effects of feeding a raw diet that we found immediately was the shedding. So we're not cleaning up cat hair all the time anymore. And the hairballs. We're not cleaning up hairballs ever. Little did we know that this is not a normal thing. We thought shedding. And
there's a lot less poop and it doesn't smell as bad.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Also, great side effect of feeding a raw diet. Yes.
I just think that's absolutely crazy. We are so grateful. I wish Jane and I have been so excited about this Get Fresh with Your Feline Week. We are so grateful that you made the time
out of your
to
busy
be with us,
schedule.
Especially to talk on this subject, because I keep thinking that was really such a hump for me to get over. And I really feel like you are really empowering all of us, exactly like you said at the end, of things to be afraid of in this world right now. This one, it's kind of low on the list. And you just gave us all the tools to really overcome that. We are so grateful for your time,
Yes.
your wealth of knowledge. Dr. Judy Morgan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Mwah.
Thank you.